So the first question I always ask people, been doing it for years now, is what's the one thing that you want somebody else to know about you? You start.
Not sure.
Okay.
Let's see. One thing, someone else to know about me. I am a big Italian Greyhound dog fan.
There you go. That's the one critical piece that you know how to house it. And she is.
And a vegetarian.
And a vegetarian.
Vegetarian, Italian Greyhound dog fan.
Tree hugger.
Yeah.
We'll edit that out. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll say, like I was telling Allison before, my main reason for deciding to come to do this was, it's all kind of uncharted territory for me, just growing up as a kid, with my family. My mom and father had gotten divorced right around the time when catechism and everything was a big time, and the separation of visitation times and everything made it very difficult, and I never actually made it to catechism or anything like that, so I've never made my communion or been confirmed. And
Okay.
I've done church with my grandparents and my parents here and there, and it just never did really feel like the right time or anything like that. And now with the boys coming, which when Melinda and I got together, she told me was possibly never going to happen. And we had some friends that actually got together and did a prayer for us in a prayer circle, and I feel like they were a true blessing, and I just feel like it's good. It's a good sign, so it's a good time to get into the church, and after coming here, I feel like I belong.
Good.
So
It's a terrific story, thanks. I like that. It's true. That's, we share something in common. The same thing happened with my son.
I really.
Yeah, my wife wasn't supposed to be able to have kids. Oops.
And that's what
It
she.
wasn't an oops. It was, we really wanted to have much, so.
That's what she told us when she told me, like, you don't want a baby because, like, I've always wanted kids.
Yeah.
And when she knew that, she told me you don't want a baby because the possibility of having kids is pretty much non-existent. And when we were going to try, our friends did a prayer circle, and I actually, like, felt a presence and, like, a power, and given the way it happened so quickly.
Sure. Well, we're here to learn about the Episcopal Church.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really not a catechism as such, in the sense that, well, one of the things you learn about the Episcopal Church is we're not a dogmatic church.
Right.
We're a church that has core beliefs and encourages a great latitude of intellectual inquiry as well as spiritual inquiry. By that I mean, if, for instance, just as an example, in liturgy, no two Episcopal churches are exactly alike in the way they do their worship services. There are three sort of distinct groups, but lines get blurred sometimes between the three. One is called High Church or Anglo-Catholic. One is called Broad Church, and one is called Low Church. And Low Church in this case isn't a condescending term. They use the term themselves. I say they because we're not. By Low Church, I mean it's very Protestant looking and sounding, and it is a minimalist way of worship. It's not a lot of ritual to it. Although it follows in all three of those flavors of Episcopalian worship, all follow the Book of Common Prayer. That's the basic unifying framework for the worldwide Anglican Communion, or one of the unifying features of it is we all use a Book of Common Prayer that all find their original editions in England. The worldwide, and just for clarity, you'll hear me go back and forth between the word Anglican Communion and Episcopal Church. Okay? So we need to talk a little bit about what that means. The Anglican Communion are a confederation of churches worldwide, making up the second largest Christian denomination. And they find as their root, their historic root or home, in the Church of England. And so, unlike the Roman Church, we don't have a pope. But we do have somebody that is a historic archbishop that we consider to be the visible head of the church, although their authority is very limited, if any, in the General Confederation of Churches. They don't rule. They're a historic figurehead that we all give a nod to with due respect and honor for the position and role, and that's the Archbishop of Canterbury. So I want to make it real clear. He's not a pope, he's an archbishop. And when we say he's an equal among equals, he truly is an equal among equals. The best way to describe the way the Episcopal Church is set up, or this worldwide Anglican communion is set up, actually occurred to me just a few weeks ago. After 13 years, you'd think I'd get it, but no. It's very much like what are called the Orthodox churches. Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox, everybody's got an Orthodox church. It's an American Orthodox church. They are all called the Orthodox churches because their liturgy and theology has not changed one bit since about the year 300. And they do that intentionally. That's one of their claims for being Orthodox. This is the way the original Christian church worshiped. This is how we're going to continue to worship. The heads of those churches are called patriarchs or metropolitans. And they're all autonomous churches, regionalized usually by country, but sometimes by region. The Russian Orthodox Church is in Belarus, as well as Russia and Estonia, and the head of that church is in Moscow. The most senior of all of these metropolitans is in Istanbul. It used to be the city. There were, in around the year 400, about 11 major bishops, major areas, and in the east, they went from Alexandria, Egypt, all around. If you can picture a map of the Mediterranean, they kind of circled the eastern end of the Mediterranean, going into Greece. The west, Europe, had one metropolitan, which eventually would become known as the Pope. Completely unanticipated. So the Episcopal Church, the Anglican communion, works more like the Greek Church, what we call the Greek Church or the Orthodox churches. It's a series of national churches throughout the world, usually with the head of their church nationally, and that's the highest ruler, religious ruler, within that national or regional expression of the Anglican Church. In the United States, it's called the Episcopal Church. Its actual name for incorporation is the Protestant Episcopal Church of the United States of America. It was founded in about 1780. I say it was founded, it actually redefined itself because before then it was the Church of England. The American Revolution kind of disrupted that, as you can well imagine. We weren't going to pray for the king. We got to. Nor did this church particularly want anything to do with anything that reminded them of European royalty. That's what the American Revolution was all about, throwing that sort of oppressive yoke off their backs. So bishops were viewed skeptically, because in Europe, bishops acted and behaved like royalty. So what we'll do is we'll discover a bit about this worldwide Anglican communion, confederation of autonomous churches. We'll find out what the structure is about the Episcopal Church, how we govern and rule ourselves, and therefore how we work out our theology, because we do have theology. We'll discover what those core values are. I talked about core values. I always tell the story. I have a lawyer very Roman Catholic. His uncle was the head clerical lawyer for the Archdiocese of Louisiana, one of the senior dioceses. So, as you can imagine, it was very risky for him to become Episcopalian. He had a lot of pressure on him. So he really grilled me one day in class, because I do have a tendency to ramble. He looked at me and said, "Okay, Father, I hear all of that about the history and everything. Look, what's the minimum I have to believe to be an Episcopalian?" Well, that shook me up at the time, but what he was asking is, what's our core values? What's the non-negotiable features of the Episcopal Church? That's what he wanted to know.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll discover what those are. I always like history, because I think history gives us context for the present. We have to know how we got here.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to spend probably 2 or 3 classes on the history of the church. Probably 2. I can go all the way from Jesus to the present presiding bishop in 30 minutes, but that wouldn't do any of us any good. Besides that, I like talking about executions, burnings, and other wonderful tawdry things that our wonderful tutor and before the tutors tended to play with. So it's good, exciting stuff, I think, if you like history. If you don't like history, drink some coffee. So, okay? So that's what it's going to look like.
Okay.
Usually in first class also, and we may repeat this again, I usually ask, you've attended church here a couple of times. What do you find curious or attractive, or what kind of sparks your interest? What do you need to know about this place? This church, how we worship, the denomination, or is it all kind of a blank slate that needs to be filled in? Sometimes you have to know stuff to ask a question. Right? You know, we've all had jobs where they would say, "Well, you should have asked." "Well, I didn't know the question to ask. That's why I messed up." So that had to be a lot in the Navy. In any event, do you have anything that's kind of, wonder why they do that, or I wonder what that's about?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's mainly a blank slate for me,
Okay.
because like I said when we first started, it's all kind of like new to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the main reason I'm kind of drawn particularly here is kind of the open acceptance.
That's important.
And I'm a very loving person of everybody, and I feel like everybody deserves a chance, and nobody should be shunned upon because of any reason particular. You know, as far as my core basic belief is, if you're a good person, you deserve a chance, you know? If you do right by others, then...
You should fit in well here. Because the Episcopal Church of the United States in particular has a quest to basically make that imprint on the world.
Mm-hmm.
To bring the message you just said to the wider world. We know in this country, and we know in the world, in fact, that that's not the case for Christianity right now in many of its forms. Without being overly critical about other denominations, the fact is certain denominations do put judgment as their number one religious priority. In this case, I mean judgment in a rather harsh way. That's not to say there isn't or shouldn't be judgment in the context of our beliefs and who we think of as God or Jesus. It's certainly discussed a lot. So don't hear me say there is no judgment in the kingdom of heaven. But that's the kingdom of heaven, and we're the church. Use the old Catholic phrase, I love the phrase, church militant. That's us. Militant. So the church militant is the earthly church, and how does it express itself? In some denominations, I think, are afraid They seek at bits and pieces of Scripture to justify their anger at the world and their judgment of people. They raise very harsh and high standards, and we see that in the United States. It becomes even more focused in certain other countries or regions. And that's a shame, because I think what we understand in the Episcopal Church today is that Jesus is a harvester. He wants to gather people in, and he wants to help them find our direction or our compass that leads to love and unification and restoration. And by restoration, the restoration goal is to return us to that lovely state that humanity in the Garden of Eden, wonderful Hebrew man, perfect balance and harmony in and throughout nature and our own humanity. And so the Episcopal Church, under the leadership of Bishop Curry, is rediscovering and re-energizing our denomination using the phrase we're part of the Jesus movement. And by that he means it is a movement of prophecy and evangelism that preaches the gospel of love and preaches the gospel of toleration and inclusion rather than exclusion and judgment. It's an incarnational faith. You'll read in one of the books that I've given you that the author characterizes the Episcopal Church as a Christmas church. By that we are always seeking the face of Christ in everyone that surrounds us, in you, and the couple that's sitting in the church right now, which I'm pretty sure is a hooker and a pimp. And I'm also pretty sure under the influence of drugs. But our church has to be open to them, and not just open to them, but to extend to them hospitality and a sense that this is a safe place to come and to know Jesus. Right? So that's what characterizes, which Bishop Curry, who is the national head of our church, is characterizing as the Jesus movement. Mm-hmm. Okay. So with that, I'll give you Jesus movement bumper sticker.
Cool.
See? Yes, friends, you too can have a Jesus movement bumper sticker. For only $9.95, and not one but two. There you go. You get one.
Thank you.
They've got 2 cars. So you'll see in this that our Bishop Curry says we are the Episcopal branch of the Jesus movement. He sees the Jesus movement as a worldwide movement that was really started with the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. He saw those original followers, we'll call them the Easter people, became stimulated to preach this gospel that their Savior, their Messiah, had preached. And it's a complicated gospel. It's very demanding of all of us. But it was a movement. It really was a movement. I mean, it really started caught fire in Pentecost, so to speak. The symbol of Pentecost is flames on your head. Because the scriptures tell us that the disciples were gathered in a room with women and just the whole original kind of core group that followed Jesus and didn't run away, or if they did, they came back, and Jesus had promised that the Holy Spirit would descend upon them and to empower them to proclaim. And that happened. We call that day of Pentecost. It's also a Jewish holiday, the day of Pentecost. And they started speaking ecstatically, where thousands of people in Jerusalem understood the words that they said in their own native language. And one of the other supernatural events is the Holy Spirit descended upon them as of tongues of fire over their head. So whenever you see this picture of a bunch of grim-looking Jewish guys with flames coming out of their head, That's what's going on. And the metaphor of fire goes way, way back. If you're going to stick around for church, you'll find about it in today's sermon. So, that's kind of a general view of the Jesus movement. Bishop Curry, and we'll get a little bit into who he is, what he is, and how he's elected, and what his authority or restraints of authority are. I think it's important to know the authority of the church and how it governs itself, because what I want us to all know as Episcopal is everybody has a voice. And there are not too many churches that offer that. And it has we are, if nothing else, always sensible. And it has a good, sensible balance between religious authority, those of us who are professionals, and laity, those of us who pray and do the work of Christ in the world. And so there's a balance of authority there. It's not all loaded with the pastor or the curia in Roman Catholic churches. We deal with boards and commissions and things like that. And so that balance, I think, gives voice and has given voice to some of the prophetic things that we've witnessed. And women demand to be part of the club, right? It was a boys' club for a long time. Scripturally, it's a boys' club, in my opinion. So how do we break through that scriptural boys' club and boys' club throughout history of male dominance, almost everything in society, in a church, which is an institution reflective of its community and values? Well, women had a strong enough voice and managed to create a sense of a demand for inclusion in all the sacraments of the church, and specifically I'm talking about the ordination of women as priests. Very radical, very strange, and that was accomplished. So in the Episcopal Church, anyway, it's normative. Our last presiding bishop was a woman, Catherine Jeffers Shorey, very articulate, very intelligent, did a good job. We see women bishops throughout the United States, suffragan bishops, which are kind of associates, as well as bishops of various dioceses. The next wave of prophetic witness that the Episcopal Church suggested, because of the work of the laity in conjunction with the work of bishops and clergy, is the full inclusion of gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, questioning, whatever other letters there are out there, in the full life of the church. Historically, what had always been permitted, well, up until the 50s and 60s, I don't care what denomination you were in, it was don't ask, don't tell. And we know that there were a lot of gay men who were in holy orders in all the denominations and the Roman Church as well. It was a safe place for gay men to stay in the closet. And gay women, well, they just had to sing in the choir and be quiet. In time, some of these gay men and women started coming out of the closet. That made things awkward, didn't it? I mean, in some cases, priests would have baptized and nurtured and loved and raised those children into the church, and now all of a sudden they're gay, and it's setting what had been historic traditional theologies against you. I want to love this person, but I've been taught that I'm supposed to judge them as sinners. We worked our way through that conflict, most of us. And it was hard work. It set us against each other. Ooh, I'm almost preaching my sermon for the day. It did. It was hard work. And it was unpleasant. And people who loved each other were torn apart. But today, we now happily, most churches in the Episcopal Church, now happily offer the sacrament of holy matrimony to same-sex couples. We certainly have bishops, priests, deacons that are gay, and that's our witness to the world. And we still have a lot of work to do in that area. And there are other places that the Episcopal Church is starting to rediscover its Jesus movement Christian voice. To read the first 3 chapters of those Epistles.
Okay.
I will tell you about those Epistles. It's written by Dennis R. Maynard. The reason I like this book is because it is unapologetically Episcopalian.
Okay.
Episcopalians tend to be a bit demure in how we present our church and our faith. And we need to change that. We need to stop being demure and start shouting from the rooftops, look what we have to offer. Okay? So Dennis, and this is getting to be a bit of a dated text. I'm trying to find the copyright in here, but 2011 is the most recent copyright. It was first written in 1987.
Oh, wow.
So, and I assume it's been updated since then, or it seems to have been. But I like the way he approaches the Episcopal. He's selling you on the Episcopal Church.
Okay.
I don't agree with everything he says, and because we're Episcopalians, that's okay. But he does characterize in helpful ways and contrast and compares different denominations, what our claim is, and what we hope to be. And we'll talk about some of those hopes and some of those, I believe, fantasies that he has in this book of who we are. Okay? So we'll start going over that. Because we're offering this module as a video enhancement, if you can't make classes, there may be a lag time, but they hopefully will be made available to people who enroll in this Inquirer's class, which will be about 8 units to 9 units of class time. Okay? So we'll wrap it up with that.
Yeah, I hope that is definitely